Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Way, Terminal, Dread 1. The announcement. The loudspeakers crackled to life, sending a sharp hiss of static through the cavernous, dimly lit terminal. The noise was jarring, a sudden intrusion in the uneasy silence that had settled over the travelers, who were slumped in their seats, fatigue etched deeply into their faces. The endless delays had worn them down, and now they were too exhausted to glance up. The air was thick with the stale scent of burnt coffee and damp, worn-out carpets. A suffocating blend that only added to the growing sense of unease. Then, the announcement came, each word clear, yet eerily mechanical, carrying a disquieting undertone. Attention, all passengers. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, all flights are cancelled indefinitely. Please remain in the terminal. Do not leave the airport. We apologize for the inconvenience. The voice was devoid of emotion, a cold, detached command that sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Murmurs of frustration, tinged with fear, spread among the passengers, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Overhead, the departure boards flickered, the once orderly rows of destinations and times now spiraling into chaos as every flight switched from delayed to canceled. The fluorescent lights above seemed to dim in unison, their sporadic flickering casting long, jittery shadows across the floor. The terminal, once bustling with the energy of travel, now felt vast, cold, and hollow, a tomb of missed connections and lost hope. To the unseen, hours dragged on, though no one could tell whether it was hours or mere minutes. Time had lost its grip, slipping through the cracks like the insidious cold that seeped into the bones of those huddled in the terminal. People tried to make themselves comfortable, reclining awkwardly on the hard, unyielding plastic chairs, some curling up on the cold, unforgiving floor. Others wandered aimlessly, their eyes hollow, faces pale under the flickering lights. The airport staff, usually a constant presence, had vanished without a trace. The food courts stood empty, their colorful signs now dark, and the enticing smells of food had long faded. Even the ever-vigilant security personnel were nowhere to be found. The only sound was the low, relentless hum of the air conditioning. This dull drone draped the terminal in a blanket of oppressive silence. Occasionally, the rustle of a traveler shifting uncomfortably, or the faint tap of rain against the massive windows broke the quiet. Still, these sounds only served to amplify the the growing sense of isolation. The terminal's once familiar noises had transformed into something alien and unsettling. A young woman, clutching a frayed boarding pass like a lifeline, approached the information desk, her footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice trembling as it reverberated off the walls, swallowed by the emptiness surrounding her. "Is anyone here? What's going on?" Her voice lingered in the air, unanswered, before fading into the void. She turned back towards the scattered passengers, her heart pounding. Then, something caught her eye, a fleeting movement in the glass's reflection, a quick and fluid shadow slipping away into the dim corridors leading to the gates. She spun around, eyes wide, but saw nothing. The same lifeless scene. Yet something had changed. The air felt thicker, heavier, charged with an unseen menace. It was as if the terminal itself was watching, waiting. Others began to sense it too. Paranoia spread like a contagion, infecting one passenger after another. Whispers grew in intensity as people shared their sightings, dark shapes glimpsed from the corner of their eyes, only to vanish when looked at directly. A man, pale skin glistening with sweat, swore he saw a figure. No, something, standing in the shadows near the baggage claim, its eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent light. His voice cracked as he recounted the encounter, his gaze darting nervously around the terminal, as if expecting the shadow to return. 3. The departure. The terminal descended into a deeper, more oppressive gloom as night fell. The few remaining lights flickered and buzzed, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, their edges fraying as if they could reach out and ensnare the unwary. The temperature dropped, a biting chill creeping into the air, chilling the travelers. It was a cold that wasn't just physical. It carried the weight of something ancient and malevolent, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. A family huddled together near a gate, the mother clutching her children tightly, her eyes wide and wild as they darted around the room, watching the shadows with growing terror. A businessman, his suit now wrinkled and his tie askew, paced frantically near the exit doors, tugging at his tie as if it were strangling him. Others remained rooted to their seats, too afraid to move, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet wide open with fear. Sleep was not an option. The darkness held many unknowns and unseen threats. Then, a sound came from deep within the terminal. A low, rhythmic thudding. Distant at first, but growing steadily louder. It was the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the deserted halls. But these weren't the footsteps of a person. they were too slow, too heavy, and each step seemed to reverberate with a dull finality. Like the tolling of a death knell, panic erupted. People screamed, bolting in all directions, their frantic movements chaotic and disoriented as they searched desperately for an escape. But the exits were sealed, the heavy glass doors locked tight, the windows impossibly thick, distorting the view outside into a surreal, shifting landscape that offered no hope of escape. The shadows were no longer content to linger at the edges. They moved with purpose now, fluid and sentient, slithering along the walls, creeping beneath doors, stretching across the floor like dark tendrils seeking out the terrified passengers. One by one, the travelers were claimed. The shadows reached out, ensnaring them and pulling them into the darkness. Their screams echoed briefly, only to be abruptly cut off as the shadows engulfed them and dragged them into the abyss. Those who tried to hide found no sanctuary. The shadows seeped into every crack and crevice, relentless in their pursuit. The terminal became a hunting ground, the shadows of the predators and the passengers their prey. For the truth, the terminal was silent once more, save for the occasional crackle of the intercom and the distant, echoing thuds that marked the end of yet another life. The air was thick with the lingering scent of fear and despair, a miasma that clung to the walls, the floor, and the air itself. Then, as if in response to the bloodshed, the final announcement came, its tone eerily calm, almost soothing. This is a final boarding call for Flight 66. Passengers, please proceed to Gate D for immediate departure. A small group remained, huddled together, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and terror. They stared at each other with hollow eyes, their faces pale as the full horror of their situation sank in. The gate mentioned in the announcement was at the far end of the terminal, a place none had dared approach. It had always been shrouded in mystery, blocked off by barriers that hinted at endless construction, yet no progress was ever seen. Now, the barriers were gone, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that led to a single gate. The gate loomed ominously at the end of the corridor, its door slightly ajar. A harsh, unnatural light spilled out from within, bathing the area in an eerie glow. The light was too bright, too white, too wrong. It wasn't the light of salvation or escape. It was the light of something far more sinister, a beacon drawing passengers into the unknown. Compelled by a force they couldn't resist, the survivors began to move toward the gate, their feet dragging as if weighed down by an invisible burden. The closer they got, the more they felt their very essence being pulled from them, their bodies dissolving into the shadows, their souls ripped from their forms and dragged into the eternal void that awaited beyond the gate. As the last of the passengers crossed the threshold, the terminal plunged into complete darkness, the oppressive silence broken only by the faint, lingering whispers of the lost. In the deserted control room, empty screens flickered with static, showing footage of an empty terminal, devoid of life, as if no one had ever been there. Now, a silent, empty shell. The airport waited patiently for the next group of unsuspecting travelers, ready to ensnare them in its endless, inescapable darkness. The intercom crackled one last time, then fell silent. Outside, the world continued, blissfully unaware of the horrors within the terminal. Inside, the shadows waited, patient and hungry, knowing that sooner or later, more victims would arrive, forever lost in the terminal's eternal social proof. Ethan reoriented his phone and pushed his stocking cap back to reveal more of his hair before offering his audience a two-fingered peace sign. Hey, guys, what's up? Aiden raked Ethan's hand. Dude, what the hell? What's gotten into you? Sam chortled, recording both of them on his phone through a cloud of steamy breath. Scared? No, Aiden barked, glaring apprehensively into Sam's camera. I'm black, moron. Shit like this gets a brother killed. In response to Aiden's misgivings, heart, laughing, and smiling emojis floated up Aiden's image on Sam's screen. Feeling smug, Sam showed Aiden the immediate, real-time results. Aiden rolled his eyes. Whatever, fool. They ain't black. Ethan resumed a filming position with a sarcastic smile, framing the tall fence behind him in the background. Don't worry, Aiden, buddy. We'll be good and gone before anybody notices. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Sam impatiently gestured to the shadowy mansion. Pressing on, Sam directed his mobile to the naked, claw-like limbs of bare trees that lined the drive, reaching over their heads. It don't look like anybody's been here lately, since the 60s, Aiden said, jutting his hands into his pockets and hunching his shoulders. Trespassing aside, something felt eerie about the property. He felt eyes crawling all over him. Been shuttered ever since. It was foreclosed on by the bank after Thaddeus's grandson died. The house is old, protected by some kinda historical preservation law. They wanted to put a Walmart here, but couldn't. It can't be knocked down. Our resident bookworm and brown noser, ladies and gentlemen, Ethan said, capturing him and Aiden in the shot and bowing to his camera. Yeah, I read, okay? Aiden said, shoving Ethan away. This is it, peeps, Sam said, angling his phone to take a wide shot of the property. Thornbrook Manor. Ethan interrupted Sam to draw a dramatic, wide-eyed slash across his throat with his finger. The third sorcerer. Annoyed, Aiden glanced side-eyed at Sam's phone and shrugged. speaking directly to Sam's followers. "It's where the geocache told us to go next. Abhorrent ground," Sam whispered ominously, reciting a phrase they found written in the cache. Flipping the phone's camera to face him, his face was uplit in the darkness. WTF? What's that even mean? Built in the 1860s outside of Seattle, the Thornbrook property was considered an architectural gem of Victorian elegance and grandeur. Dilapidated, weathered, and crumbled, its glamorous splendor, however, was lost to the past. Situated on a lush estate, the mansion boasted a commanding presence with a towering 3-story roofline, with 4 chimneys and 2 pointed spires. Its exterior facade was crafted with intricate details, replete with ornate carvings of strange and fanciful beasts, sturdy stone pillars, and delicate trimmings that lent the structure an artistic flair. Its architect was both an engineer and an artist. Its front doors were made of rich mahogany and intricately carved, yet spray painted with urban gang tags. "What is that?" Sam said. He focused his camera on a carving along the structure's foundation. It had a rounded body with taloned hands, a sloping ape-like brow, and an angry expression bearing menacing, jagged teeth, yet had stone wings like a bird. It looked tethered to the building by a black iron chain. That's a water drain," Aiden replied. "Water comes down the chain into the monkey's skull, spilling out the mouth." "Ugh," Sam groaned, zooming in on it. "That's crazy. What kind of acid were these guys on?" "Opium," Aiden clarified with a nod, thinking, then added, leaning into Sam's camera, "That or absinthe, herbs, sugar, ice, wood alcohol, big-ass psychedelic effects brought on from consuming thujone, a compound." Look!" Ethan interrupted, cutting Aiden off, holding his own phone over his head as they approached a ruined reflecting pool in an overgrown garden sanctuary. Surrounded by a wrought iron fence, the pool's still black surface reflected the sky's cold, starry void. "There's the statue," Ada's rumbled into Sam's camera. Friendly heart emojis raced up the side of his face. "Yeah, well, if you're curious and want to know more, DM me." "Come on, Brainiac," Sam scolded, slapping Aiden on his shoulder. Sam turned his camera's flash away from the monkey creature to send it receding into the darkness. Cautiously entering the gate, they circled the pool to step through an overgrowth of thorny black bushes with serrated, tar-colored leaves. A marble statue of a Victorian gentleman, leaning heavily on a cane, loomed over the pool's edge. Soiled by centuries of grime and vigorous splotches of mold, thorny brambles climbed its legs and torso. "Dr. Thaddeus Parlow," Aiden whispered, scanning through Wikipedia articles on his device. He passed the links on to the audience through social media. Sam zoomed in on Parlow's vandalized head. chiseled away, it looked as if it were mauled. Chunks of marble were gouged from Parlo's face. Hundreds of shocked and gasping emojis went scrolling by. Sam zoomed back, panned, and held his phone horizontally to keep Ethan and the statue in the frame. "We've got more than 1,600 viewers, man. Play it," chided Ethan's followers. Little blue bubbles of text went floating by. Okay, I'm going to play it. Just hang on," Ethan promised his followers before turning his phone around to navigate its settings. Ethan, I don't think..." Aiden's eyes trailed from his phone to the water. Sam could barely contain himself and removed his cap. He fixed his phone on Ethan. "Man, this is going to be so great," reflected upon the smooth black surface of the pool. Aiden saw a sharp, vivid reflection of the Milky Way. However, looking up, ambient light from the city obscured the night sky, and it was cloudy, overcast, a typical Seattle night. Puzzled, Aiden absently asked, Ethan?" Closing on Sam, Ethan held up his phone up to Sam's and pressed play to stream the video. A cheesy, AI-generated black and white image of a man with the head of an octopus appeared, followed by a grainy, scratchy recording, as if sampled from a wax cylinder. "Fahanglui maglwanaf Cthulhu ralya wagahanagul fetarn," recited the octopus man in a low, spectral voice. Thousands of emojis raced up Sam's display, and his follower count skyrocketed. Elated, Sam pumped the air, shouting, Yeah, Wuganagulftagan, fuckers, bring it on," Ethan mocked with a sarcastic sneer and a crude, offensive gesture into Sam's camera. "Aya, Cthulhu ftagn, to drill ngkthikri dagon," the recording concluded, leaving only a still, uncomfortable silence. Seeing the statue's mutilated head reflected in the pool of dreamy starlight, Aiden backed away to glance at Thaddeus, and then back at the water. The statue's angle against the surface was all wrong. "How's that possible?" he breathed, replaying the video on his phone. Ethan shook his mobile at Sam and shouted, "That's it! The third Sorcerer's Challenge! Woo! Look!" Sam exclaimed, holding out his phone. A Bitcoin balance was leaping ahead in hundreds of increments. "We won, man! Where's all of that shit coming from?" Ethan said, peering at Sam's phone. Sam turned the phone toward him and manipulated its settings. "Dunno. Some guy in Amsterdam." Ethan squinted. "Amsterdam? Where's that?" "Who cares?" Sam exclaimed. "We're gonna be rich." "Sam," Aiden pleaded, pointing to the pool and gripping Sam's jacket by the sleeve. "Something's wrong." Sam jerked his arm back. "Bro, what the?" Following Aiden's hand, Sam saw the impossibly bright, brilliant universe and the crisp reflection of Thaddeus Parlo's statue, except it wore a ghostly, bearded face. Before Sam could react, Ethan, his back to the pool, held his phone contemptuously under the statue's chin to replay the video. Sam returned his phone to a recording position. Cthulhu fahtagn, to drill Unkthakree Dagon, repeated the grainy octopus man. Sam and Aidan cried out, just as a massive blue and green scaled tentacle burst from the reflecting pool, gripped Ethan's leg, then dragged him screaming into the water. The light from Ethan's submerged phone sank into the pool's depths and disappeared. "Jesus fuck!" Aidan shouted, throwing himself from the side of the pool against the iron fence. Sam's phone, his thousands of followers witnessing the entire event, burst into a flurry of shocked, worried, and sad emojis. From the shadows, the chained monkeys squatting along the manor's cornerstones grinned, howling in terror. Aidan grabbed Sam to bolt for the iron gate. But as they ran, the thick, thorny, weedy brambles snagged their jeans and shot out to wrap around their legs. Tripped, Sam fell, sending his phone skittering across the cobblestone surrounding the pool. "Sam!" Aidan cried, reaching back for him, only to find Sam's body ensnared in the grips of the wicked Flora, pinned against the fence's bars. Sam pleaded, extending his arm to Aidan. "Help! Help!" Tugging, the thorns ripped into Aidan's skin and tore at his legs and ankles. He could feel the lacerations, the blood saturating his jeans. Aidan struggled and tried to get closer to Sam, only to find tendrils of strangling, grinding vines cutting into Sam's throat. His eyes bulged and bled, and he choked on a protruding mouthful of black leaves. It began to rain. Scared, senseless, Aidan scrambled backward to lunge for the iron gate. Shut tight by the snaking weeds, it barely budged. Aidan glanced behind him in horror. The statue of Dr. Thaddeus, Parlow, remained as it was, and always had been, except its vivid, colorful reflection was a ghastly monster with a translucent nest of writhing tentacles waving from its jaw. The pool was still, unmoving, as if coated in a layer of sheer, translucent ice. The raindrops did not affect its surface. The pool was disorienting, mesmerizing, spinning. It was as if the whole of the universe lay open at Dr. Parlow's feet. "Absinthe, my ass," Aidan shouted, bracing his foot against an iron post to pull at the gate with all of his weight to rip it free of the twisting vines. Fleeing from the sanctuary, a wind bellowed from the chimneys, blowing from inside the mansion with a terrifying roar. Slipping on the mud, his heart pounding, lungs burning, Aidan ran with everything he had down the drive and scaled the fence. And without even a second glance, he sprinted away, leaving his friends forever at Thornbrook Manor. Glowing in the darkness, the video of the octopus man replayed on a loop, while a mass of emojis, check-in waves, Bitcoin balances, and DM requests flooded Sam's phone before a green tentacle reached out from the water, cupped it, and slowly slid it into the pool. Straitjacket. Chrissy. Yates pocketed the last of her equipment and squinted her eyes, the way a predator zooms in on its prey. Oh, come on, she thought, her nervous gaze darting between her watch and the sanatorium door. Impatient, she stood herself at the entrance, which was one of corrugated iron. It was an almost baleful presence, and one that only chose to admit the most intrepid of investigators. Beware ye who enter. Paranormal investigation was no hobby of Chrissy's. It wasn't something she did for one Friday evening's amusement. It was her life, much to the annoyance of her fiancé, Todd. Why can't you do something normal? He pleaded. Like book club? Chrissy scoffed at that, quietly terrified at how suburban Todd was becoming. She found it baffling how her and Todd, once throwing darts at a world map to see where they would travel, could now only sight a scoot around in the Kroger parking lot as the most adventurous thing they had done together. They were now completely different, on a cellular level. Fundamentally, Chrissy was a rebel. She was a free spirit, a girl with twigs and berries in her hair, a girl who cried whenever you killed a ladybug by accident. But here, she had lost her iridescent shell and become a scrawny ribbon of beige, a sculpture of suburbia-shaped pulp. She had failed, resolutely, to rebel in the big ways, which is why she found herself always trying to hold her own in the small ways. You're late, Chrissy spat at her soon-to-be husband, tapping her watch. Good evening to you too, Chris. Todd pecked Chrissy on the cheek. Here, they looked comically incongruous. Chrissy, forever undertaking these new challenges with relish, and Todd breathless after the hour-long walk from their apartment. Let's just get this over with, shall we? Said Todd, with a smirk on his face. Where's Milo? Didn't you get his message? He can't come. What is that grin for? You know how much this means to me, Todd. I know, Todd reassured her, taking her hand. I know. Never had swapping opinions about a chick lit with a group of soccer moms over a bottle of cheap sorority rosé looked so frightening to Chrissy. Good, she announced loudly, betraying a sudden strength of character beneath her sallow skin. Let's do this. Almost immediately, Chrissy produced a flashlight, its crisp, cylindrical beam throwing sharp shafts of light over the dripping gloom, and a room that was now a rich repository of the past, a place that was once a refuge for any woman, its intake striding anyone from a widow with night terrors to a sexual deviant denouncing her family's Catholic faith. Chrissy read that at its peak, the sanatorium was home to up to 200 people. It was a number Chrissy almost found comforting. These women, united in their combined will to escape, now seemed more powerful than ever. Are you sure we should be doing this, Chrissy? Asked Todd, trailing his fiancée. What do you mean? We can do what we want. No, but I mean, should you be doing this? I don't want to talk about that now. I know, but... Shh! What was that? The only sounds available to their naked ears were the scratch of their footfalls against the frost-crusted twigs and the steady plip of water, the hallmarks of any B movie. The noise Chrissy managed to hear presented itself again, something anyone else would put down to the movement of a rat. Did you hear that? When Todd shook his head, Chrissy looked back and, aided by the dwindling light of her pathetic torch, saw a battery of glazed leporine eyes. Oh my God, Milo! Chrissy exhales, her breath white with frost. What are you doing here? I thought I'd make a last-minute appearance. Milo, Todd's longest and closest friend, said. Keep you on your toes. Did you know about this? Chrissy spat to Todd, her cheeks surrendering any of their remaining color. Why are we here again? Milo asked, comically unprepared, wearing just a shirt and jeans. Todd shrugged his shoulders. Ask her. She wanted to come here. She must have told you a reason. There is no reason, Milo. You know this. Actually, there is a reason, Chrissy corrects Todd. If you must know, my mother was here. Your mother? Chrissy. What? Todd asked, confused. You heard me. Just before the place shut down, she was admitted here. You never told me. I don't think you ever asked, Todd. Shall we move on? More determined than she had ever been, Chrissy stalked deeper into the darkness. So why was your mother here? Milo asked, closely following Chrissy. Milo! No, it's fine, Todd, replied Chrissy, grateful for the question. I don't know exactly how she came to be here. She didn't tell me. But when her dad died, her mom married again, and he started sexually assaulting her, raping her. Oh, shit. Yeah. And if that wasn't enough, she was abused by her own husband, my dad. But no one believed her. That would drive anyone into the loony bin. Chris, do you really think this is a good idea? Maybe we should go home, Todd advised. No, Todd. If you want to go home, that's fine. I'm staying. Chrissy's determination seemed almost thunderous in this confined space. It was a quality she inherited from her mother. A woman who the naysayers tried to force her into the identikit mold of the abused woman you might expect to see plastered on your TV screens and newspapers, blue and bloody beside the dishwasher. Instead, she was a born-again freedom fighter who learned her life lessons the hard way, like an up yours to a traditional fable. It was no wonder that Chrissy had such a difficult childhood. But she, much like her mother, refused to be packaged as a woman, fighting on the behalf of anyone who had ever been brutalized, anyone worn threadbare by abuse, anyone still haunted by the nightmares. Sharp, serrated pinpricks of terror, a spider-webbed mirror, a shard of glass, a calloused palm, the girl who used to throw bricks at street lamps and through store windows for nothing but her own amusement, who used to grieve as easily with laxatives as with a bottle of wine. and who used to hide the ladder of cuts on her arm, was no longer that little girl. Chrissy wasn't scared anymore. She had conquered her fear. She wanted to talk about her past, even if Todd didn't want her to. Todd liked to sugarcoat things and cower behind the happy illusion that things were better than they actually were. He wouldn't allow them to tackle issues head-on. Say one of their golfing friends, clad in one of those Argyle sweaters, mid-slurp of Long Island iced tea, mid-bite of a crustless cucumber sandwich, brought it up. Todd would swat it away and insist that it was only temporary. If Chrissy wanted to talk about something as mundane as what they were having for dinner, that would be fine. But if she wanted to talk about how she came to be in a psychiatric hospital when she should have been spending her gap year in Phuket, like any other student, then that would, of course, be off limits, which was why she had to come here, to this very hospital. "Oh my God, what is this place?" Milo asked, weirdly curious. "This," Chrissy replied, happy to answer, "was where they did the whole electroshock therapy thing." Milo shared a confused look with Todd. "How do you know that?" Chrissy smiled wryly. "I just do." Chrissy couldn't help imagining her mother in this room, putting her legs in stirrups and placing herself at the mercy of a masochistic doctor. "We are going to scour it out of you," he would spit, forcing a wet sponge between her lips. He would have her return a vegetable, someone who squeezes a nurse's hand to tell them you're still alive, someone who slurps liquidized food through a straw and shits in a bucket. With renewed determination, Chrissy crouched down to the floor, where it was dark and slippery, strewn with machine parts and moldy baby clothes. She reached into her backpack and produced a tumbler, a pen, and a piece of paper. "What are you doing?" Todd asked, his eyes following his partner's movements. "I wasn't planning on doing it here," Chrissy said, frustrated. "But if you would just work with me, then maybe we could—" "No," Todd objected immediately. "If you're doing what I think you're doing, then I'm out." "Oh, come on, Todd." Milo was surprisingly game. "Don't be such a buzzkill. Last time I did it," Chrissy resumed, "I could hear my mother's screams. You know, I could really talk to her." Todd shook his head defiantly. "No, I'm not doing this." Chrissy switches off her torch and holds aloft a pack of candles before striking a match and lighting them. The feeble flames curl and sway and lick the dusty air. "Are we ready?" Chrissy asked, bathed in an ombre of red and black. Milo gestured to Todd to sit down. Finally, Todd acquiesced, taking them both by the hand so Chrissy could commence. "Great. Thanks, Todd. That means a lot." Chrissy began by setting an upturned tumbler on the paper, before reaching into her jean pocket for the yellowed, crumpled remains of a photo of her mother and her crooked smile. A smile that, once upon a time, seemed to generate its own light, one that lit up everything around her. "Don't break the circle," Chrissy instructed the two men. "Whatever you do, do not break the circle." "Okay," Milo said, his voice trembling slightly. "Don't worry," Chrissy said warmly, forcing a note of levity, noticing that his voice had ascended an octave. "That's exactly what I was like when I first tried it." Todd and Milo looked at one another once again, almost in awe at Chrissy's newfound pastime. "Mom," Chrissy said, looking upwards, as though to some external force. "If the answer is yes, please slide the glass to the right. And if the answer is no, please slide the glass to the left. Okay? Mom, are you with us?" All eyes swiveled to the glass. Chrissy pursed her lips in nervous anticipation before looking up again, only a few moments later, to see the glass moving in Todd's direction to the right, its rim scraping across the floor. "Hiya, Mom." "Oh my God." Milo tried to retract his hand. "How did you—" "Shh." The glass moved back to the center. "Mom, I'm gonna ask you some questions, all right? How are you doing this?" Milo demanded. Todd silenced him with the whites of his eyes. "Mom?" Chrissy called out, trying to re-establish the connection. "Mom, are you okay?" The tumbler moved to the right again. Chrissy smiled. Milo turned to Todd, who he thought would be on his side at this point, given this was his first time as well. But he too was riveted to his spot. "Joe, Mom, if you're still there, could you please write something for us on this pen and paper?" Chrissy indicated the pen and paper in the center. The glass stirred yet again. "Ting, ting. That's amazing, Mom. What would you like to tell us?" The ballpoint was picked up and floated in mid-air before starting to glide across the page, leaving in its wake a long and inky sentence. "Tell them what they did to me, Chrissy. Tell them what they did," as a draft, wispy as a trail of jet exhaust, wafted across the room. All withering eyes, in unconscious tandem, moved in Chrissy's direction. The glass shattered. The whole room descended into a sudden flurry of accusations, and finally, the circle broke apart. "Jesus Christ!" Milo shouted, mopping his forehead with the back of his hand, trying to make sense of everything. "What just—" "I don't know," Todd answers, looking to Chrissy. I don't know." Chrissy's lips folded into a smile. "I told you it worked." "No." Milo stood back, his eyes wide with fear. "That is some nasty voodoo shit. Come on, Todd. She's crazy." "Crazy?" Chrissy said, feeling the cold fury hoard in her chest. "You think I'm crazy?" Seeking the exit, Milo ran headlong into the darkness, the scrape of his footfalls dissolving with his screams. "He won't get very far without a flashlight," Chrissy remarked. "He's right," Todd said, jerking to his feet. "You are crazy." "What?" "I don't know what's happened to you in these past few days, and I don't really care. But this has got to stop, Chris. It's this obsession. It's not normal." "You don't think I'm normal?" "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Todd screamed, his throat taut with desperation. "I mean, Do you really understand what I'm saying? This, he continued, grabbing her jaw, spittle landing on his cheek as he enunciated each word, is not normal. Go then. I don't need you anymore. My mom's here. Oh, for fuck's sake. Your mother isn't here. Chrissy so desperately wanted to prove her fiancé wrong. Oh, really? Chrissy could only sit and watch as the man she loved doubled back and wailed in pain, falling to the ground with a terrific thud. He reached for his foot, as though to favor his leg, much like a wounded animal. What the fuck? Todd tweaked his trouser leg to reveal a 3-pronged scratch on the back of his leg. Did that hurt? She asked, savoring this moment. Something changed in Todd's expression. His surroundings suddenly felt hazy and distant, as though on the other side of a glass wall. You're insane, Chrissy, he said, struggling to his feet, running for the exit. You're insane. This was Chrissy's cue to look back in her bag and find her EMF meter, holding it out in front of her. It made a distinct clicking noise, its crackle like the one that heralded the beginning of a Western or a grainy VHS tape. Mom, he's gone, Chrissy said, checking Todd had definitely left. It's just us now, I promise you. Just us. Chrissy sank to the ground and tried to keep an absolute silence, so that all could be heard was the solitary metronome of her EMF meter. I'm here now, Mom. I'm here. Click, click, click. Shimmering silver. And lo, it rained from the sky. Ripples of blue echoed through the air, akin to the early morning, as if the sun rent the veil of night. Terror enveloped me, but in wonderment, that fear fast diminished. The stiz of the night sky dulled in its presence, as the horizon was engulfed by billowy white clouds, tinged with fiery wisps at their fringes. As the light faded and the celestial gift plummeted to earth, its descent accompanied by a shrill and discordant whistle, the ephemeral day drew to a close and yielded once more to the night. The stars reclaimed their brilliance, and the blue turned to black. My eyes were unable to avert their gaze from this wondrous sight, for it was a blissful offering from the heavens that had fallen into the nearby woods, a gift meant for me to open. Curiosity stirred within me, urging me to quell any lingering doubts. I resolved to march towards the crater and pull at the ribbon. This treasure would be mine, and mine alone. I longed to weave my hands through its warmth, allowing it to cool against my breath. I loved it, truly and deeply. That distant thud that shuddered the house upon its landing was a summons directed at me, a beckoning that could not be ignored. It craved my affection. A nervous dread enveloped me as I ventured through the gnarled branches of the forest, the scent of gasoline and wood smoke pervading the air. The fumes stung my eyes, obscuring my surroundings in a milky haze. Without the need for sight, I followed the call that brought me to the hearth of this fire, not conveyed in words, but in a sorrowful melody that could be felt in each nerve of my being. Once again, the dread is hammered down, pushed deep below the all-encompassing love, until its weight rendered it to a mere powder. Large swells of smoke undulated from the center of the impact. They swirled in a tumultuous motion, reminiscent of the foaming waves of an enraged sea crashing upon steadfast rocks. Within this chaotic display, a cocoon of pale, crystalline air gleamed with grandeur. As I ventured closer, my sweat evaporated into wisps of vapor that quickly became one with the swelling smoke. With a sweeping motion, I waved my hand through the glaze and arrived at its core. A shimmering silver presence floated before me. The tears washed my eyes clear so that I could gaze upon it without hindrance. It blotted out the sky, an immense entity that defied reason. And yet I found myself able to cradle it within the palm of my hand. Its touch ignited the ground and transformed the landscape into a fiery inferno, while an inexplicable chill permeated the air. At first glance, it appeared a flawless, perfectly round sphere, but in the next moment, it danced and twirled around me like raindrops caught in a volatile storm. It possessed the ability to mirror the surroundings, reflecting the woods with pristine clarity. And then, in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a radiant light, coated in an oil-like substance that bestowed upon it all the colors of the rainbow, shifting in hue from dusk to dawn. "I am here," I said, though the words were not solely my own, as they harmoniously echoed from the mouths of others surrounding me. Men, women, and children wept in unison. We had all answered its call, yet my love surpassed theirs. The essence of who I am wailed as well. But I disregarded their cries and sought solace in the shade of the towering trees, those too strong and old to be ripped up from the ground. Their shade would shield me from the sight of what I had to do, what the silver needed of me. It could love only one. Their blood warmed my hands as the core of this silver was washed with a chill air. "Have I earned your love?" I asked. My voice resounded in solitude. The words curled in the air with grace like a spectral mist. The wind took my question, ascended high until it could no longer be seen, blended into the bright light of the silver entity. And in that moment, fear seized me. Incomprehensible utterances trembled through the broken branches of the surrounding trees. Leaves bled embers, and the ground receded beneath me. The dread and doubt that I had buried, crushed, and disregarded were no longer fleeting moments of uncertainty. They had consumed my entire existence. For a brief spell, I was free, free to see that I had become prey, groomed and lured by that which hungered mightily. I rose high, as light as a feather caught in the storm, akin to spoken words ensnared in searing mist on a cold night. The silver transmuted into something else entirely. Initially, it enveloped me in a blanket of velvet warmth. Soon thereafter, tendrils began to thread through my skin, knitting us together as one. At first, it felt like love, a pulse of soft ecstasy, goose-pimpling my skin. But that moment was fleeting. Soon after, I could feel pure ice weave through my bones. I looked on as it clambered over my body, its face taking shape until the silver became a mirror, the reflection a scared man, a familiar stranger. As it kissed me, I felt myself fall back down to earth and into the dark. The ground was where I awoke, reminiscent of an abandoned runt from the litter. Nestled amidst the fallen leaves, I awaited the break of true day. At first, I crawled, my movements uncertain, until the recollection of walking flooded back to me. Faltering over clumsy feet towards my mother, her radiance shimmered with pride. She couldn't hold back the tears. A memory long forgotten and not my own, brought to the surface only now that it was needed. I ran as an inexplicable force propelled me forward, urging me to something unknown. It evoked within me an overwhelming desperation, an emotion so deep I struggled to grasp an understanding of its purpose. I dashed homeward, burst through the door, and tumbled up the stairs. A confusing dread clawed at its cage. The sight of an empty bed where two once slumbered brought me to tears. But why? In the adjacent room, a smaller bed intended for a child remained empty and unmade. Two voices among the countless last night now bore an eerie familiarity. The dried blood that coated my arms began to burn and itch. A lingering presence persisted within me, a parasite of the man that should be long lost amidst the rubble of the void. In boundless darkness, his tormented screams resounded and reverberated through the depths of my being, erupting from my own lips in a howl of pain, wrestling control. The feeble flickering of light, mere fleeting moments of dominance, witnessed this vessel gain possession of a knife. "I am your gift," I whispered to him, my voice laced with wisdom. "Watch from your shelter of safety as I give purpose to your existence. Allow my love to radiate through you, turning the shadows into everlasting day." Yet he paid no heed to my words, dismissing my guidance without a second thought. I plunged it deep into my throat, succumbing to the irrepressible urge to die, as if it had become my sole purpose. Deeper still, I drove the blade until the pouring wound wept tears of red. And then, Shimmering Silver, night shift. It all started one wintry night. I was waiting to cross a busy intersection on Oxford Street in London's West End. My workday had just ended, and it felt good to be out of that stuffy office. I had been feeling warm all day and hoped I wasn't coming down with a cold or flu that regularly permeated the office environment at this time of year. Joining the throngs of people heading for the underground trains on their way home, I breathed in the crisp air that usually had a ruffled chill to every month of January, and was looking forward to getting home, switching on the telly, and putting my feet up for the evening. Whether it was the cold night air invigorating my lungs, or just getting away from my desk, I felt a heightened sensation, bordering on elation. Even my sense of hearing had become acute to conversations in the crowd around me. More interestingly, my stomach began to rumble like it hadn't eaten for days, but I distinctly remember eating a large portion of steak tartare for lunch, watching the animated green walking figure appear at the traffic light opposite. I stepped onto the road, but something immediately caught my attention. The people crowding around me were glowing. That is, their necks were glowing crimson. Even the ones wearing scarves appeared to be radiantly red, like they had twinkling Christmas lights wrapped around their heads. A sudden downpour of heavy, wet rain brought me back to my senses, which was fortunate for me, as I was about to kiss a strange woman's neck. This surrealistic impulse that I almost acted out panicked me. Never had I been attracted to a woman so much that I felt like blatantly accosting her on a street. I was happily married, for goodness sake, and not interested in other women. The more I searched for a reasonable explanation, the more I broke out in a cold sweat. It had alarmed me to a level of fright and flight, so I rushed headlong down the escalator stairs at Bond Street Station and jumped onto the Jubilee line to take me home. However, it was rush hour, and I found myself stuffed into a train carriage like sardines in a tin. That's when further urges tormented me. I could smell a sweet, metallic pungency all around me, and it was intoxicating, alluring, and simply irresistible. I realized I needed to control myself, because part of me argued it was immoral to feel the strange growing urges building up inside me. So I closed my eyes and chanted an unrecognizable verse in my head in an attempt to distract me from my pulsating desires. It didn't help, because the words I recited only increased a compelling hunger that needed immediate feeding. Feel the hunger deep inside, a tormenting thirst to be denied when the scent of blood is in the air. Eat here, drink there, gorge everywhere, unable to control my urges. I found myself exiting the train 2 stops early at Swiss Cottage. The rain had stopped and left a misty haze dampening the ground. Car headlights cut through the fog, creating halo effects around pedestrians crossing the road, making them look like they were glowing from head to foot. It was best that I could not see clearly. It would speed my passage home without any temptations, taking a shortcut down an old alleyway that connected to a quicker way home. I hoped to shave several minutes off my hike. The alleyway was poorly lit, with lamp posts approximately 50 meters apart, most of them inoperative from damage done to them. As I picked up my pace, I heard a sound like someone slipping on a wet surface, then a cracking sound like a hard part of them had hit the cement pathway. A yell, followed by an expletive, told me that the person I was descending on had fallen and hurt themselves. "Are you okay, miss?" I genuinely asked on my approach. "I've cut my chin," the young woman stated. "Do you have any Kleenex tissues or paper towels?" It was then that the enticing aroma of freshly released blood wafted under my nose. Gently cupping her chin, I leaned in and "What are you doing?" the policeman demanded to know as he shined his bright flashlight on me. I was frozen in place, my eyes the only moving part darting towards the constable, then darting back at the young woman whose chin I was tightly attached to with my mouth. Logic escaped me, but flippancy did not. Quickly recalling something my mother used to say at the dinner table, I blurted it out with clenched teeth. "I would like to explain, Constable, but my mother always told me to never talk with my mouth full." Either the constable had no sense of humor, or he was tired of dealing with flippant replies to his standard police inquiries. He pulled out his truncheon and began to attack me about my head with his nightstick. One swift rip of his neck with pointy, sharp claws I didn't know existed until that moment caused him to slump to the wet ground in dead weight. Witnessing this unexpected act, the young woman screamed a blood-curdling shriek that sounded like music to my highly acute hearing. Attempting to escape, I counted to 3. Then an impressive light of foot sprint had me overtake her in seconds, where I dispatched her to the same place as that bullying policeman. Needless to say, I was horrified at my involuntary actions and needed to get home as quick as I could. I managed to cover the last mile in 2 minutes, flat. Another surprise that shocked me, because until that moment, any form of exercise I participated in, running was never my best activity. "Hello, darling," my Eloise greeted me as I unlocked the door to the safety of our welcoming abode. "How was your day?" Without a word, I unintelligibly grunted and shook my shoulders before hurrying up the stairs to the bathroom. "You okay?" Eloise called up the stairs. I was too shaken to answer. How could I explain a happening so bizarre and an anomaly so incomprehensible? It was too surreal for words, but remarkably, it had left me tingling with an unexpected surge of excitement. Don't forget the Fortescues are coming for dinner, darling. They insisted on a weekday. Some money-making opportunity they want to present to us. Freddie Fortescue was always scheming to make an extra buck here and there, since his wealthy, stuck-up parents had practically disowned him for spending all his trust fund on get-rich-quick schemes. He had mentioned this one in passing, the last time we got together. But I told him that pyramid schemes only made money for those at the top. It was obvious that saying no to Freddie was like saying no to happiness. So he probably had his wife, Bunty, put pressure on Eloise to allow him to pitch the idea over a Wednesday night dinner tete-a-tete. The very night I seemed to be at a disadvantage in mental faculties. Damp from the evening's events, I sat on the edge of the bathtub and grabbed a towel from the rail, then proceeded to dry my face and hair of the excess blood splashed on me during my outrage. My body trembled at the memory of what I had just done, and a soft, painful cry escaped my lungs. Moments later, the bathroom door swung open, and Eloise rushed in, a look of worried concern on her face. "What's wrong, darling? Are you okay?" "I don't know where to start," I mumbled. "It's okay," Eloise softly reassured me. "Calm yourself." Tears filled my dry eyes. Something horrific had happened to me. I felt like my insides were remapping my DNA. "I feel like my body is changing, Elle. Like I'm a teenager again, going through puberty. It's such a strange feeling, bordering on an energizing sensation of euphoria. I'm sweating, but I don't feel hot." Gently caressing my chin until our eyes locked in comforting gazes, Elle pressed the back of her other hand against my forehead. "You do feel rather on the cold side, darling. I have done something horrible, Elle. Come on," Eloise requested. "A nice glass of red downstairs will set you to rights. You can tell me all about it after you change clothes." Ushering me from behind, Eloise nudged me from the bathroom. I felt both confused and elated at the same time. But how would I be able to explain it to Elle? Snapping me out of my inward thoughts, Elle held up the cravat she wanted me to wear, then produced the most exquisite red velvet jacket while helping me on with it. It was a tad kitsch, but she has always loved seeing me dressed up in 1970s Hugh Hefner-styled clothing. She said seeing me in a velour way caused her to purr like a kitten, and that it always added a little excitement to the evening. Besides, the Fortescue's sense of fashion always seemed to tease at the edge of tackiness. It would be rude not to indulge our guests on this dark, wet, and atmospheric night. No sooner had Elle dressed me, Freddie and Bunty were ringing our doorbell. As I opened the door to let them in, I decided to put on a brave face and try to act normal. This was helped by Freddie and Bunty gliding into the hallway, dressed in a similar 70s revival fashion. Good company for my velvet jacket. Freddie's wide lapel suit with platform shoes made him look taller than his small stature. But Bunty looked deliciously attractive in a rainbow-striped halter top and brown flared pants. Luckily for her, the faux fox fur coat she wore as she entered our home had kept her cozy and warm in the outside fog of the evening. It was a much-needed distraction from my earlier experience, so I told myself to just get through dinner, then confess all to my loving Eloise. Throughout the evening, conversation from our guests had been jovial, but I remained slightly reserved, still trying to come to grips with my sudden change of character. It wasn't too noticeable, as Freddie took center stage and entertained us with quips and jokes of an era gone by. You know, the borderline racist and sexist one-liners that matched his dress code. Bunty shyly giggled at Freddie's off-color humor, but managed to correct him when he went too far. Eloise had seated me next to Bunty, and opposite us, she sat next to Freddie. Soup was the starter. However, my appetite had escaped me, so I didn't partake in eating any of it. Trying to suppress flashbacks of the evening's earlier slaughter, coupled with my adrenaline level still high, acted as a natural hunger suppressant. Eloise noticed my introverted behavior and flashed a concerned look at me across the dining table, but I smiled and nodded that I was okay. During the main meal, Eloise served up some medium-rare fried steaks with pommes frites that, although smelled enticing, I just played with mine until I became bored. So, topping up everyone's wine glass, I settled into listening to Freddie open his sales pitch on why we should attend his pyramid parties. He explained how getting in early guaranteed us a big payday, and that we could repeat the process multiple times. Illegal as his idea was, it was tempting nonetheless. I was on the verge of agreeing when all my senses suddenly heightened beyond containment. It was as if I could hear Bunty's pulse beating like a drum struck methodically in cadent rhythm. Chillingly, it sent me into a form of stalking mode, instantly attracting my devoted attention, beguiling me with its seducing sound. I soon realized it was the incantation of Bunty's blood being pumped through her soft veins. Studying her pulsating neck closely, I was immediately overcome with the oddest desire to kiss her. So I leaned in toward her and, "Darling," Eloise abruptly demanded my attention. "Where are your manners? We should always feed the guests first." I turned my head sideways to respond to Elle, and was bemused at the expression on Freddie's face. A look of sheer shock and horror stretched across his entire expression. As I removed my face from snuggling into Bunty's neck, she unexpectedly fell face down into her caramel flan that Eloise had served for dessert, staining it blood red with every pumping beat of her open jugular vein. I was flabbergasted at the sight before me. But before I could cry in shock, and more importantly, before Freddie could run screaming from the house, Eloise quickly bit down onto his large-collared, silk-shirted neck, draining him of a large amount of life-giving blood. Not to be upstaged, he too imitated Bunty's reaction and slumped with his nose buried in his dessert. Before you freak out, Eloise halted my panic. We need to talk. My gut reaction was to scream. However, the satisfying sensation that coursed through every fiber of my body sat me relaxed back into the comfort of my chair. Everything became clearer. This was to be the new normal, my newly formed ideology argued. What surprised me the most was my Eloise. It was obvious that she was like me, but had been so for a tad bit longer than I. It was also apparent that she was the one responsible for my predicament. When did you? I sincerely inquired. Sunday night, darling, she replied, cutting me off in mid-question. Why? I'm so sorry, my love. I'm selfish, and I couldn't bear the thought of living through eternity without you. Her candor was admirable, and her expression of love for me was so sweet that I immediately forgave her. She did it out of love, I reasoned, with the lucidity of a madman. However, there was still one question remaining to be answered. Elle, who turned you? Nigel, at the company Christmas party, the one where partners weren't invited? Obviously for a reason, darling. The world needs more vampires, apparently. It's all the rage. Somehow, I had missed that memo at my own place of business. Elle's answer certainly explained the increasing numbers of sickie days my colleagues took before never returning to work. It also explained my wife's sudden rush to buy thick black velvet curtains that she kept drawn during daylight hours. I simply thought blocking out the intermittent English sunshine helped ease her migraines. What created a conundrum is that she chose to convert me without any prior discussion, but I suppose that would have been a difficult topic to broach. Darling, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that I will live forever. The bad news is you won't, so I need to bite your neck and drain your blood. I may have run for the hills if she had explained it in that manner. However, the way I felt after ripping through bountiful Bunty's porcelain flesh was too intoxicating to argue with any rational thought. I was now a night crawler, a citizen of the undead. My world had changed. It was up to me to live with it and learn to sleep by day, because from here on out, I was going to have to work the night shift. Still trying to process events, I didn't hear the front door being broken in, the heavy sets of footsteps piling into the hallway, and the police helicopter hovering above our roof, shining its blinding searchlight beam through the open curtains. I must have been recognized on my mad dash home at the speed of a fast-moving city car. angry shouts ordering the two of us to lay on the floor face down, accompanied guns pointing directly at us. Eloise remained calm, but I was still processing the intrusion and trying like an idiot to protest at the 8 heavily armed members of the CVS, the counter-vampire squad. "Gentlemen," I began, "couldn't this wait until after dinner? We still haven't opened the port." An over-aggressive policeman, frustrated by my words, hit me in the head with the butt of his assault rifle, but it had no sensory impact on me. He might as well have just blown air in my face. He obviously had not seen what I had done to the last policeman that attacked me. "Darling," Eloise softly called, "it's time." "Time for what, Elle?" "Time for us to find somewhere else to live." In a speedy blur, resembling life at fast-forward viewing, Eloise swiftly overpowered every member of the vampire squad, beheading each one of them before they could react. Once again, I was shocked at the carnage, but in parallel, oh so proud and in awe of my wonderful Elle. In time, I would most likely possess those unworldly skills. But for now, I remained in a state of marvel at her ability to nullify an overwhelming force that had threatened to overpower us. "Bravo, Elle," I congratulated her, my compassion for the dead non-existent and my grasp of reality rapidly slipping from any semblance of sanity. Quickly grabbing our coats, Elle pulled me by the hand and led me down the hallway and through our broken front door, turning to take a final look at the home we had to immediately vacate. The whir of the hovering helicopter above our house reminded us that time was of the essence. Putting a loving arm around my beloved Elle, I flipped a defiant, juvenile-inspired middle finger up at the pilot, then guided Elle out into the foggy night. "What now, Jeremy?" Elle sentimentally asked as we fled at top speed to avoid the chopper's searchlight. "Let's eat first," I replied. "I'm starving." The care and feeding of monsters. Via Sol looked around the mansion with distaste. She didn't like being here, and she certainly didn't like what she had heard about the monster who used to live here. Not that she put much credence in the old tales that some of the more senior members of the Lollipop Guild talked about. Those wizened relics of the past had many tales to tell. All the stories outrageous, and all the events sounding just a little too fantastic to believe. Via poked around the foyer and the living area, marveling at the size of the place and grimacing at the thick coat of grime and dust that covered every surface. She had drawn back every curtain on the ground floor, yet the area remained dark and suffocating. Curious, the high, vaulted ceilings spiraled upwards, seemingly without end, but the claustrophobic feeling stayed. The ancient wood creaked and groaned with every step she took, voicing its complaint in sonorous, funereal tones. She wanted to leave. Right now. But she had a prospective client. This place had been on the books for over 100 years, and getting it sold would be a major coup for her. She had visions of a corner office and a hefty bonus. The realtor overcame her fears and waited. But she waited outside, a wicked witch indeed. What ridiculous tripe! Franklin Baumgartner looked around the mansion. Via thought his eyes looked dead, but, she reasoned, that could be the effect of the poor light in the mansion. His assistant, a Miss Holcomb, also had a lifeless look about her. Their size bothered Via. The man towered over everyone in the land, standing almost 6 feet tall. The woman was a giant as well. Their attire was odd, and their actions startling. "Miss Holcomb, take some notes," Baumgartner snapped. Miss Holcomb dutifully took out a notepad and readied herself for the onslaught to come. Replace the windows, double-paned, insulated with argon gas. Make that triple-paned, American-made. Always buy American-made, Miss Holcomb. None of that Chinese shit. Get some people in here to reinforce the floorboards. They squeak like a bitchy wife. Cleaning crew. Make that cruise. American cruise? Miss Holcomb pushed her glasses back on her face and peered up at her boss. "No, hire the illegals that come over here. They'll work cheap and do a good job. Remember, Miss Holcomb, buy American, hire foreign." "Got it, sir," Miss Holcomb said. She wrote rapidly and then paused, waiting for more. "Contact Kate Mueller in Chicago. Have her come in and furnish this place. Spare no expense. It's a fucking mausoleum right now. Get Halliburton to give me a call. I hear wolves out there. He's good at killing things. Gardeners, of course. Lots of them. The land has gone to hell. Oh, and I saw some beehives out there. Find me a beekeeper. If the bees aren't producing honey, we'll exterminate them. The roof needs to be checked." Baumgartner went on like this for some time. Miss Holcomb wrote furiously, nodding occasionally, and staying 6 feet behind her employer. Via Saul didn't show it, but she was confused and alarmed. She had never heard of the places mentioned. America, Canada, Chicago. The man also used language that was unfamiliar to her, especially the word beginning with a foo sound, or bitchy. Maybe it's their way of saying itchy. And maybe the foo word is a term of endearment. Via was snapped out of her reverie by Baumgartner's stentorian voice. "Miss Soul? Hey, you still with us?" Via looked up and almost stood at attention. "Of course, yes. So, the price? You have it listed as 133 lollipops. That must be a typo." Baumgartner frowned at her. He didn't approve of sloppy work. "No, sir, that's the price. But we can negotiate." "Lollipops?" "Yes, sir. I'm assuming that you can pay in lollipops." "Hell no, missy. We use good old American dollars. The best currency in the world, I'll have you know. Lollipops? What the hell kind of lollipop do you require? Are they lined with gold? Well, no. That is, they're just lollipops. Baumgartner looked at his assistant impassively. He blinked and shook his head. Miss Holcomb waited patiently for something to write down. "Show me," Baumgartner said. Via nodded, confused as to why someone needed to see what was widely considered the coin of the realm. She went outside to her horse and buggy, retrieving a couple of lollipops. She went back inside the mansion, not easy in her mind. Baumgartner stared at them for some time. He inspected them closely, twirled them in his fingers, and even sniffed them. He handed one to Miss Holcomb, who mimicked her boss's actions. "Am I to understand that these lollipops are made with sugar? Nothing else? Just sugar and some natural coloring, I think. I'm not sure. The Lollipop Guild makes them, and they guard their secrets carefully." Baumgartner nodded, although confused by the method of payment. He didn't hesitate to take advantage of the situation. "What'll you take for these lollipops? Cash? Goods?" Baumgartner eyed Via closely, noting her body language. He was successful in part because of his ability to read people. "Well, I was going to purchase some new clothes after work. Food for the winter. Grain for the horse," Via said. She was nervous. The conversation about money bothered her. No one talked about money here. No one at all. Baumgartner considered what the realtor said. He whispered to his assistant. She nodded lightly and wrote something down on her notepad. "Tell you what, Miss Soul, I'll bring you a new horse when I come back, if you give me one of these." Via gasped. A new horse would normally cost 7 lollipops. She tried to keep her composure. The man is an idiot. "However, I could use a new horse. Poor old Rusty is getting old, and maybe I could get a little more out of this dolt. A new horse is acceptable, but I think I'd want a little more. Maybe throw in 100 kilos of grain for the new horse." Baumgartner accepted quickly. The woman's a dolt, selling this place for 133 lollipops, and all she wants is a new horse and some feed. Jesus, this is gonna be easy. We'll be back next week. Have the papers ready to sign. I'll have the, payment in full, Baumgartner said. He didn't even try to haggle over the price. He was starting to love this exchange rate. Baumgartner was as good as his word. He paid for the mansion and bought Via a new horse, along with supplying her with an impressive amount of grain for the horse. Still, Via was disturbed. The stranger found his way to her homeland. There were tales about a farm girl who had done this, but that was nothing more than a story that the old ones told. Baumgartner was indeed from another land, Kansas. His Aunt Elle had given him what was left of the family farm, and he sold it quickly, at a ridiculously low price. His aunt was dead. The farm was not a money maker. and he hated farming. The only thing he kept was a pair of silver slippers, for they entranced him. In the light, they turned into a fiery, ruby-red color. Aunt Elle also told him that he could transport himself to a magical land by wearing the slippers and wishing himself to this nebulous place. The slippers were far too small to wear, and he didn't believe such nonsense anyway. One night, after drinking in excess, a particularly cheap and poor quality of a Chianti, he tried it. Frank found himself in the middle of a poppy field, staring at a city that seemed entirely made of green crystals. He took one of the crystals and closed his eyes again, wishing himself back home. Emeralds. The green crystals were emeralds. He made several trips like this and became rich. He also discovered streets made of gold bricks. He helped himself to plenty of these as well. When he returned, he found that the gold bricks and the emeralds had been replaced. Frank had no qualms about taking more emeralds and more gold from this place. None at all. Frank Baumgartner had found Oz. The inhabitants of the land that Baumgartner invaded were becoming unhappy with their new neighbor. He had a landing strip built for his private jet. The people thought it was a monstrous steel dragon and fled every time it landed or departed. The same emotions arose when Baumgartner drove his vehicle. To them, it was nothing more than an iron terror roaming through their land. Queen Ozma demanded that the stranger leave. He refused. She had no recourse to his refusal. No one had ever defied the queen before, so she was at a loss as to what to do. They had no police force, for there was no crime. They had no standing army, for they had no enemies. Until now, Baumgartner paid well in lollipops. This became a problem, a huge problem. The economy was turned upside down and inside out. Munchkins and Winkies, with newfound wealth, invaded Emerald City and bought up desirable plots of land and built houses. Baumgartner built several yellow-bricked roads that led to Emerald City, and the flood of country people to the city was unsustainable. The new royalty had been, just a short time before, farmers and craftsmen. The Lollipop Guild had been decimated by the influx of lollipops from Baumgartner. Inflation ran rampant, and then a recession hit. Everyone felt its effects, and the people of all 4 quadrants of the land found themselves struggling to survive. Baumgartner didn't care. He was rich in America, but here he was a god. He controlled the lands, the supply chains, the very fabric of life. Poverty became the new normal. "We have to do something!" Vaya slammed her fist on the table. The Munchkins looked at her with surprise and consternation. She had never been so demonstrative. Via Sol had always been the epitome of grace and charm. Goru stood up, though it made little difference in his height relative to everyone else. He was short, even for a munchkin, but he commanded respect. The eldest member of the Lollipop Guild had been Goru for the past 70 years, and his word meant something. "I have a solution, but you aren't going to like it," he said. A quietness overtook the room. If Gora said that it would be displeasing, then it would be very displeasing. The council braced itself. Goru outlined his plan. Everyone was horrified, but they agreed to it. Effie sensed the munchkin well before he came into sight. She sniffed the air and smelled fear, desperation, sadness. Goru stopped short when he saw Effie. It had been 20 years since she had been banished to the edge of Munchkin Land. Although he had voted against the banishment, he still felt a thrill of fear. Effie was dangerous. All her kind were dangerous. What brings the great and powerful Gora to my humble shack? Effie picked up a snake and stroked it gently before putting it back on the ground and giving it a shove with her toe. The snake slithered off into the underbrush, looking for a meal. A stranger from the outer lands. A bad person, Effie. Very bad. We need your help, Goro said, looking down. He was afraid to meet Effie's eyes. I have no quarrel with you, Gora. You didn't vote against me when I was banished. But why should I help? I was exiled because of my grandmother. Goro nodded. She was right. She had no reason to help. But I will, Effie said softly, because the stranger has something of mine. Goro looked at her, surprised. You know about the stranger. I may be restricted to the edge of the desert, but I hear things, she said, because the animals tell me. Goro believed her. Effie's grandmother understood the animals. I'll come to the council next week, when it's over. I'll want something in return, though. Goro nodded. He was empowered to agree to almost anything. What? Effie looked at Gora and smiled. It was a beautiful smile, so unlike her grandmother's wicked leer. My grandmother's old house. Goro expected this. He nodded, and then he left as quickly as possible. The edge of the desert frightened him, and Effie frightened him most of all. He thought of a saying he had heard long ago, needs must, when the devil drives. He would wonder, years later, who the devil really was. Effie flew above the trees on her umbrella, scanning the countryside. She knew the area well, for she had been raised in Winky country. Her old house looked different, modern and bright. She hated it. A portly man came outside and looked around, hands on hips. Effie's tremendous sight allowed her to see him clearly. He had a mug look on his face. Odd clothes covered his portly frame, and he was smoking a cigar. Effie banked sharply and flew toward the man. He finally spotted her and stared at her in surprise and fear. She saw his eyes widen. He screamed just as her umbrella penetrated his heart. The umbrella settled gently on the ground as Effie stepped off. She strode to the man and took the briefcase. She had what she wanted. She had what belonged to her. "We have to do something," Vaya said miserably. She didn't slam her hand on the table as she had done all those years ago, but the tone of her voice revealed her desperation. Goru and the rest of the council agreed. Effie had been a hero 20 years ago when she killed the giant stranger and everyone else in her grandmother's old house. The land was freed from the bonds of American capitalism and its monstrous ways. Now, however, she was as her grandmother had been, wicked and controlling. The flying monkeys were back, as were the giant white wolves and the huge black bees. They had gotten so used to smallish wolves and gentle honeybees that the new, more dangerous versions were even more frightening than ever. "What can we do? We made a deal, and she took advantage." Goru talked quietly, as usual, but his voice was tinged with defeat. He saw no way out. "It's like the old days," he continued, "when her grandmother ruled Winkyland. But worse. Effie seems to have a vendetta against us. So, we're sunk. Back to the way things were in the old days, and no stupid farm girl to bail us out," another member said. "Where did she come from? Kansas? Where the hell is that?" Vaya was willing to travel past the deserts if need be. "Somewhere over the rainbows, Vaya. Somewhere we can't reach." Effie sat in her darkened mansion and smiled, stroking the fur of a wolf and listening to the angry buzzing of the black bees flitting about her abode. She had reclaimed her family power. The witch still remembered the day her mother died. She had been behind a curtain when the incident occurred, watching the events unfold. When the strange girl doused her mother with water, she gasped. Her mother melted in front of her eyes. Effie had never seen such a gruesome sight in her life. But that wasn't the end of the bad news. She had been banished to the edge of the desert, though the council that banished her knew full well that she would, in all probability, die from this. The only member to vote in her favor was Gora. Effie, though, had been taught how to survive by her mother. She flourished. Her hate grew. And then another stranger showed up, and with the magical slippers, her mother's slippers, and the last remaining source of all witchy power. Just a pair of shoes, silver. But they fit her feet perfectly, almost like they were made for her. Now that she was the only living witch in Oz, she could rule all the lands, not just Winkyland. There was a new ruler of the land, and she wasn't about to forget what the inhabitants had done to her or her mother. Effie scanned the skies for flying houses. It wouldn't do to neglect the lessons from the past. She grabbed her umbrella and took off across the land, flying low and fast, observing her domain. Effie was on her way to Emerald City to depose the queen. She has a date with the point of my umbrella today. I look forward to the smell of royal blood spilled on the streets of Emerald City. My only regret is that she can't melt like my mother did. Effie flew on over poppy fields and verdant landscape. Evil had returned to Oz. The monster they all feared was a woman with silver slippers on her feet and hate in her heart. The queen has an expiration date. Evil has no such restriction. Red rum. "Cut!" Leonard shouted, snapping the movie slate shut, dizzy with the relief that comes after the end of a shoot. "Thanks so much, Francis. You're good to go." "No, thank you, Lenny," Francis Keaton replied, shaking Leonard's hand. "I hope we meet again." "Me too. Good luck with your Nespresso adverts." "Where's Liliana?" Leonard called out to Travis, who shrugged his shoulders. "Travis, you reek of whiskey. It's called method acting. I had to do it all the time for Streetcar." "Ah, there you are." Liliana Hoyt, who seemed to be winning every acting award going, was grabbed by Leonard and manhandled by two of the producers onto the set. "Hey!" she screamed. "Get off me!" "You could have dressed up," Leonard said, as Liliana got thrown onto the bed. "Actually, it's fine. Just pull the comforter over her." One of the producers threw some rope around her hands before tying them to the headboard. "Leonard, what the fuck is going on? Where's Margot?" "What about her?" The same producer silenced Liliana, her face bluing in mute appeal with a strip of duct tape. Suddenly, her legs were flailing, writhing, kicking, helpless in the face of the director's conspiratorial will. And action. An unsteady Travis walked onto set, holding a chainsaw, its roar drowning out Liliana's muffled howls. Where its teeth kissed her leg, blood, first a trickle, and then a surge, began to mist the whole set. "Travis, stop!" Margot Devine, the actress who had claimed the starring role, walked in at that very moment. "Is everything okay?" Liliana called me about an extra scene. She clapped her hands to her face in horror once she saw Liliana's dismembered limbs. "Oh my God, please, detective. I don't want to watch it anymore," pleaded Leonard, turning his head away from the footage. Detective Montrose switched the computer off before turning his attention back to Leonard, whose face was still blank with anxiety. "You do know how this looks, don't you, Mr. Leary?" Montrose said. "Yes, of course I do. I mean, it's there on screen for all to see. You directing Mr. Waterman to saw Ms. Hoyt in half. It was a prop, okay?" Montrose wrote this down. "And this was for your movie, was it?" "Yes." "A prison without walls?" "Yes," Leonard replied begrudgingly. "You know, it took 2 weeks at a writing camp in Prague to come up with that. For a moment, Leonard felt it was just him and the detective at the center of the universe, the tape recorder and folders props, and the light bulb swinging pendulum-like above, illuminating the room with an unwelcome light, only there for an added theatrical frisson. "Mr. Leary, I'm confused, to say the least," Montrose said. "Not one of you has a motive against Ms. Hoyt. Can we please just rewind, going back from Ms. Hoyt's death to the day you started?" "What, again?" "Please, if you wouldn't mind." 24th October, 3 weeks into filming, after 10 seconds of looking furiously for Travis, I found him perched on the banquet in the corner, his arms and legs splayed across the leather. It reminded of that scene in Pulp Fiction when Pumpkin and Honey Bunny ransack the diner. Travis fit the aesthetic perfectly. Even though he was a star of the stage, he could well have been a vagrant. "Sorry, I was hungry," he said, like a naughty kid, with a chocolate mustache and a half-eaten banana split in front of him. "Would you like anything?" "No, I'm fine. I can't stay long." Travis's hair was incredibly greasy, striking that unfortunate balance between being neither curly nor straight. "Jesus, your breath reeks, Travis." The scent was a mix of red wine, cheroots, and patchouli, all rolled into one. "Anyway, I think you know why I'm here." "Do I?" "Yes, Travis, you do. It's about your wife, Margot." "I don't have a wife." "Oh my God. In the movie, Travis." "Oh, yeah. Sorry." Margot and James McClane, played by Liliana and Travis, began life as a vision of cold, jodhpur-wearing elitism. But when they went bankrupt, were forced to downsize and move across from the Feldmans, whose marriage they ended up shattering. "Liliana dropped quite the bomb the other day," I continued. Travis furrowed his eyebrows. "Sorry, who?" "Liliana. She plays your wife, Travis." "Jesus Christ." "Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't get involved with the other actors." Holding my nose so as not to inhale any more alcohol breath, I tried one more time to get through to him. "Liliana wondered if you, as her husband, would kill her in the script. You're the cuckolded alcoholic in the marriage, so it's completely plausible." "Oh, that's fine," Travis said, the red wine talking. "Really? It would require you to film some extra scenes. Are you available next week?" "Yes." "Great. Thanks." I gave him a slap on the shoulder. "She says it's because she doesn't want any trouble, but she wants to be a main character. Audiences love murder. I think that's the problem with movies these days." "You don't have to explain yourself," Travis reassured me. "Let's kill this bitch." 22nd October. My muscles coiled as soon as I caught sight of her. Liliana, who I am pretty sure was my least favorite, which was no mean feat, had called me unexpectedly to run through some things. And I got the feeling it wasn't to discuss the movie. It never is. The restaurant we had agreed to meet in was an upscale eatery on the fringes of the town center, the sort of place reserved for illicit liaisons and big ultimatums. I knew Liliana spent all her time as an actress, if she wasn't wielding an arc on the silver screen, in places like these, possessing the sought-after elixir that wangles 14-course taster, meals and corners tuxedos businessmen into the nooks of dingy bars. "Thanks for agreeing to this, Leonard," she said, in her native southern twang, her brazen authenticity chording a jarring note against the coy contentment of the restaurant. Liliana was rakish and spidery, her face so pale as though made of reconstituted porcelain, the cruel origami of her arms stretched to hug me. "No, really. Thank you. Have you ordered?" "I haven't." "Great," she said, perusing the menu. "You know, I haven't got long, Liliana. I have to dash It's Lily. And what do you mean you have to dash? You're such a bad liar." "What?" "Let's see how convincingly you can lie about where you were last week, when you saw me and Margot having a go at each other." She picked up the knife, as though she was poised to dissect me. "Why are you looking so worried?" The waiter arrived, absolving me of this question. He took our orders, looking askance at Liliana as he did so, probably surprised at how underdressed she was. He would be right. It was clear Liliana didn't fit in here. It came to herald a changing of the guard. No longer were places like these populated by the jewel-draped dames who held an ice-bedded coupe in one palm of their hand and the piqued interest of their stupid director in the other, but now overhauled by a new generation, one of them being Liliana, a raven-haired, new-age Janet Lee. "I'll try and be quick," she said, sipping her wine. "But Margot Devine, fucking Margot Devine, is not a subject I can discuss without completely going batshit crazy. I hope you understand." "I don't know what you mean, Liliana." "Oh, drop the act, Leonard. You know exactly what I mean." "What?" "You saw us. I saw you. Saw us." "What?" "Oh my God, don't even try to." "When we stopped filming, me and Margot went to..." "And you, I don't know what you're..." "Look, I don't care. I know you're lying. All I wanted to tell you is that I know you. I've met directors like you before. A zillion of them." This was a lie. Liliana's showreel was suspiciously short. "And I know what gets people like you going," she continued. I stared at her with my eyes wide open, loudly glugging my wine, so the silence she left was even more pronounced. "Money," she explained, as though this wasn't obvious. "Of course it's money, right? And what's that gotta do with Margot?" "Haha, it has everything to do with Margot." Liliana leaned in, her breath hot on my cheek. "I didn't want to have to tell you this. Obviously, I didn't. Not even my mom knows. But Margot and we had a thing some years ago." Liliana bit her lip defiantly, numb with inexpressible loathing. "I don't think you can call it a thing, to be honest. But Twitter will have different ideas. It didn't even last a year. I have to say, I'm surprised." I improvised, hiding my face with my glass. "Margot's a big star. Exactly. Margot Devine. darling of the acting world, splashed all over the front pages because she's been having an affair with another woman. And not just any woman. The next Neve Campbell, of course. Liliana. I don't. You know who'll come out of this the worst, Leonard. Not me. No. Not even Margot. But you. No one will watch your movie. No one will care. No one will ever want to hire you again. The prospect, although shocking, yet entirely plausible, was a terrifying one. What are you suggesting? I asked. Look, I know this is gonna sound mad, because I know we're so late into the shoot, and I know how hard you've worked on the script. But how about we kill Margot's character off? I just think this is what the script needs. So you want to kill Margot off? Yes. You can give her a big send-off if you like, but I just don't think Margot belongs in this movie. Okay, I said, summoning the waiter for more wine. I'll see what I can do. 14th of October, 2 weeks into filming, I had known these people for just over a month, and I already knew that they were the worst people I had ever met. Margot was a man-hating sociopath. Liliana was a man-eating snake. Travis was a narcissistic man-child. And Francis was simply a very annoying man. Lenny, you with us? Francis called out. I've got to go in 20 minutes. Can we wrap this up, please? Sure. I made my way back to the studio. The custom-made house for the movie, inhabited by Grace and Roger Feldman, played by Margot Devine and Francis Keaton, respectively, was gorgeously uniform and pastel. Something even Martha Stewart would be proud of. Their marriage was literally like something from a TV commercial. Something rehearsed, shot, and then left in a studio. Something always destined for the snap of a director's slate. It was so hollow, so unreal, that someone could scrawl over it with a black marker pen and no one would notice. The Feldmans lived in a world full of Minnie and Roman Castevets, where everything was dystopian and rabid bunny happy, where apples seemed to pick themselves, where lawnmowers began without prompt, and where babies slept without protest. And that's a wrap, I announce, weak with relief. I'll see you guys tomorrow, okay? In what was my only break of the day, I go for a cigarette and watch the world go by. The town, a mass of either failing or fledgling shops, of laundromats and fried chicken, was a buckle in the belt of dusty, apple-knocking America. A montage of sandy browns and russet reds that quite happily elided into one long sepia smudge. And then a shout, a scream, something that threatened to disrupt the even tenor of my walk. Just leave me alone, they spat, the voice emanating from a woman's head in the distance. What do you expect me to do? The blonde girl replied. I inched forward before doubling back when I realized who they were. Margot and Liliana. Look, I know neither of us could have foreseen this, Liliana said. But I don't want you trying to talk to me in front of everyone, okay? I think it's fine, Lily. Getting the feeling this conversation wasn't something I should be hearing. I backed up against the wall and bowed my head. Everything had seemed so civil on set up until now. Then again, it was to be expected. Actors could behave like little children. No, it's not fine, Margot, continued Liliana, spitting fury. And to make matters worse, they've given me the same fucking name as you. That'll be all over TMZ when they find out about us. Lily, please, do not touch me. Honestly, I swear to God, after we do this, if you come near me again, then I will call the police. Leave me alone. 9th September, the table read. I hated an ensemble cast. This time, luckily, I only had to contend with 4 different personalities. But it was the personalities that was the difficult bit. The 4 elected professionals, the starlet, the treader of boards, the scream queen, and the smarmy one you see on Nespresso adverts, were due at lunchtime, a pretext to pick at finger food and bitch about the agent they all once had in common. It was when I finished putting the food and drinks together that Margot Devine, the first to try my smorgasbord of bread rolls and oil dips, decided to arrive. With her eyes in some sort of half squint, forever suspicious of any gathering of men or any errant camera, Margot had her hair scraped back into a lick of blonde and was wearing an outsize puffer jacket. I pictured her getting bundled into a Land Rover by her press agent, the jacket pulled over her shoulder blades with pincered fingers, moving as fast as her praying mantis legs would permit, like a Weinstein protege whose daily intake amounted to nothing more than an iceberg lettuce leaf and a cube of blue cheese. Margot, hi. I greeted her awkwardly, kissing her on both cheeks, feeling the shocking realness of her bones. There's someone in the elevator coming up, she said, upturning her nose. I'm not sure he's a part of this. I think he's the one who does the Nespresso adverts. Francis Keaton? Oh yes, that's the one. Ah, I said, sawing Francis at the door. Speak of the devil. First shooting to international fame in his early 20s, much in the same mold as Leonardo DiCaprio. Francis Keaton was the nation's sweetheart. With orange skin and one remaining tuft of hair, he was clearly still clinging onto the vestiges of youth. But as he was Francis Delano Keaton, the perfect riposte to any insult, he was most definitely forgiven. One dimply smile from his much-pinched cheek, and you would just swoon. So, who else we waiting for then? He asked in his frothy drawl. Just 2 more. Who are they? It's not Meryl Streep, is it? No, not Meryl, unfortunately. It's Travis Waterman and Liliana Hoyt. Ah, Liliana, the woman of the moment. Liliana's coming? Margot asked, tweaking her sleeve. Yes. Oh? Is there a problem? Oh no. We just haven't seen each other since the whole cabin in the woods debacle. Oh yes, Francis laughed. Right, bloodbath, wasn't it? Ah, I beamed, breaking the awkward silence that came thereafter. I think that's them now, with an A-list swagger she could only mimic. Liliana Hoyt entered at that exact moment beside Travis Waterman. Liliana, making her name through low-budget art house movies, could not be more different from Travis, who was securely established as the doyen of theater, earning his first Tony nomination for his performance in Othello. I wondered how they would react when they would learn that they were going to be playing a married couple, which reminded me, the script I would have them read, written by myself of course, was tentatively titled A Prison Without Walls. It was about a married couple in the 1950s, the sort to hold Tupperware parties and send their children to elocution lessons, who find themselves reevaluating their priorities when a new couple moves in across the road. Hello, Leonard. Good to see you again. We had never met before. Good evening, Travis, I said, showing them to their seats. The five of us arranged ourselves in the most curious of configurations, with Margot and Travis at one end, and Francis and Liliana at the other. So, I hope everyone's got the right script, I said, taking charge. Yes, Travis responded, remarkably quick for someone who had all the zeal of a narcoleptic. But it says here, my character's an alcoholic. Is that... No. James falls off a wagon when he learns his wife, played by Liliana, is cheating on him. Is that? Yep, it was an awkward subject. Everyone knew Travis was an alcoholic ever since his stint in Cat on a hot tin roof. At least it's not me doing the cheating, Francis quipped. Actually, you are, I corrected. Roger cheats on his wife with Liliana's character. No one thought it appropriate to respond. TMZ had a helicopter above Keaton's mansion for months after he ordered a prostitute to his home while his wife was on vacation. Liliana craned forward, opening her mouth to speak. Leonard, it says here my character's called Margot. Margot. Yes, it's spelled differently. Well, I hope you don't confuse us, Margot interjected. Everyone shot a sideways glance at Margot, sulking in the corner. So, I said, slapping my knees. Shall we begin? It was finally time. We all took a sharp intake of breath before turning the first page. Francis was still smiling. Liliana was still staring at me. Travis was still dwelling on his character arc. And Margot was left to quietly fume about the fact that her namesake was played by her archenemy, Speed, Fate. Hi, Buck. Thanks for taking part in the recent Speed Fate speed dating event and submitting your feedback. We hope you enjoyed the evening. Please find below a copy of the comments you left for each of your dates. You will receive feedback submitted about you in a separate mail. Should any of those you said yes to also say yes to you, we will forward each of you a copy of your contact information so you can get in touch. The very best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team. Buck Tucker. Dated the following people: 18th July 2023. And left the following feedback. Mandy Rogers, age 37. Self-help guru. You said, fun person. Quick smile, bubbly. The conversation flowed from the get-go. Love the curls. She had so much to say, and was passionate about her interests, even if they were a bit airy-fairy. If there's one thing I respect, it's passion about your subject of choice. Refreshing to meet someone as firm a believer in destiny as Mandy is. Could talk to her for hours about sliding doors and parallel universes. Would love to delve deeper into her thoughts on escapable fate. Great date. Would you like to meet Mandy again? Yes. Evelyn Pierce, age 35. School teacher. You said, Evelyn is a dark horse. Shy to start, but relaxed as the date went on. I was nervous too, because she's very smart. I felt dumb by comparison. Very impressed by her career. She seems to be a great teacher. Very professional. I get the impression she could be successful at anything she turns her hand to, even partnering with me. She has the voice of authority. It just needs to be strengthened. She could broaden my horizons on intellectual topics, and I could teach her about life outside the classroom. Definitely see potential here. Would you like to meet Evelyn again? Yes. Katerina Cruz, age 38, physical therapist. You said. Not much to say about Katerina, except wow. I didn't know drop dead gorgeous was an actual thing, but as soon as I left her table, I felt part of me die, or at least abandon ship so it could stay behind. Her eyes really drew me in. Could get lost in them for hours. Not to mention everything else. Her English isn't great, but that didn't matter. Her body language did the talking. Can tell she doesn't take shit from anyone. And with those muscles, you wouldn't want to forget her birthday. Bit intimidating, but that's a turn on. So it's a yes from me. Would you like to meet Katerina again? Yes. Ashley Davenport, age 41, office admin. You said, Ashley is a bit mousy. Not my type physically, but has an air of mystery about her, which is attractive. Not sure why she was at the event. She was an ice queen, and I had to work hard to make conversation. Wasn't very successful. Didn't find out much about her, other than that she has cats and works in admin. I'm not a cat person, but I have a dog who hates cats, so he would probably chase them off if we got together. Pretty sure she just had her walls up. I have a feeling I could get her to loosen up. I am 100% sure it would be worth it. It would be nice to see her show some emotion. Challenge accepted. Would you like to meet Ashley again? Yes. To Buck Tucker from Speed Fate Team. Date 19th July, 2023, 16:31. Subject: Your speed. Fate. Feedback. Hi Buck. Thanks again for attending the recent Speed Fate speed dating event. We have now compiled the feedback we received from the people you met and have included it below. You will receive the contact information for anyone who said yes, that you said yes to, also in a separate mail. The best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team: Mandy Rogers, age 37, yoga teacher. They said, Buck was a pleasure to talk with. Very open-minded, and I didn't get the impression he was humoring me when I was rattling on about chakras and meditation. He seemed to be genuinely fascinated. Was interesting hearing his views on the afterlife and reincarnation. He carries a lot of nomadic energy and seems to be as much of a free spirit as I am, even if yoga and mindfulness aren't his thing. Would definitely like to bounce more ideas off him. I promised him a tarot reading if we meet again, so here's hoping. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Evelyn Pierce, age 35, school teacher. They said, Buck is great. He's a lot more adventurous than me, very extrovert, which is exciting. I need someone like that to get me out of my comfort zone. Raising 2 teenagers as a full-time single dad is not an easy task, so I take my hat off to him. Also impressed by his role as a part-time scout leader, setting time aside to take kids camping and teach them about the great outdoors. That's inspirational. Would definitely be interested in getting to know him better. Always a sucker for a good dad. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Katerina Cruz, age 38, physical therapist. They said, Buck is interesting, man. Similar interest in keep fit, training for marathon. Now, I think he has a lot of work to do, but is good. He has goal to work for. Perhaps he needs some help training. Little out of shape, but I don't have heart to say. Cute smile, kind eyes, love-bearded man. Also interested in his musical career. Must be nice to date with guitarist of upcoming rock band. I think I should like to see this. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Ashley Davenport, age 41, office admin. They said, God loves a trier. I gave him nothing, but he kept on trucking. Bonus points for that. If I was him, I would have given up in the first minute, like everyone else. 5 must have been torture. Really hate this shit. Only did it 'cause my friends signed me up, and I never would have heard the end of it. Whatever. Promise I'll make more of an effort next time. Not that he's going to want to meet me again. He'd probably sooner throw himself under a bus. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes, 2. Buck. Tucker from Fate. Team. Date. 20th July, 2023, 11:30. Subject, your speed. Fate. Contacts. Hi, Buck. Please find attached contact information for your matches from the speed date event you attended on July 16th, 2023. We hope you had an enjoyable experience and have our fingers crossed. One of your matches will be the one. We've had a number of success stories to date, some leading to marriage, and are always interested in hearing how things go. The best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team, dressed in his least shabby suit, well-worn blue check shirt, newly bought navy tie, and doused in the least repulsive knockoff Hugo Boss aftershave he could find. Tucker drew a well-practiced smile onto his goatee-framed jaw and slid into the seat opposite his date, the redhead in the white dress, whose hair was tied back in a hastily knotted ponytail, and whose name was displayed on the sticker attached to her chest. "Evelyn," he announced, clasping his hands together and placing his elbows on the table. "So good to see you. I was delighted to hear you wanted to meet me again. I felt we had a good connection, even though we only talked for 5 minutes. How have you been? How are those school kids? Hope they've been listening to teacher across the white-clothed tabletop, past the bottle of champagne chilling in a stainless steel cooler, 2 sparkling champagne flutes, and the candle protruding from a chrome holder." Evelyn met Tucker's gaze and swallowed the lump of saliva that had stuck in her throat. He hadn't thought it possible for her to be more nervous than she'd been at the speed date, especially since they knew each other now. But there she was, eyes darting about, glancing at the people either side of them, beads of sweat visible on her brow. It was going to be harder than he thought to get her to loosen up, he realized. But that didn't matter. In a way, he found her nervousness endearing. "They're fine," she said, her voice coming out a whisper, forcing her to clear her throat. "They're good. They don't give me trouble. I never have to reprimand anyone." "Really? There's not a single troublemaker in the bunch? What age did you say they were?" Tucker reached forward abruptly, suit sleeve riding up his arm, and closed his hand around the neck of the champagne bottle, causing Evelyn to jump, eyes darting to his unclean fingers. 14, she said, returning her eyes to his as he took the bottle from the cooler and started undoing the wire holding its cork in place. "And 15. No, honestly, nothing like that. I've never had to punish anyone, if that's what you mean." "I see," Tucker said, narrowing his eyes as if to peer into her mind. "Bit boring, isn't it? All that authority, and there's not a single obnoxious teenager for you to use it on? I find that hard to believe. As a former teenager in a school full of stuck-up bitches and bullying brats, I find that extremely hard to believe. But hey, if that's what you're saying, pop!" The cork shot from the bottle with explosive energy, making the nervous teacher jump again. I'll take your word for it. How about your colleagues? They all super nice, too? Come on, you can be honest. Bet there's a couple of real shits, right? Get off on tormenting the kids? Probably a few pervs, too. Pedo bastards? I know there were at my school. Oh, I know. Can think of at least 3 motherfuckers who deserved to have their dicks cut off, sitting forward, extending his arm, pouring bubbly liquid into his date's glass. He glared as she shook her head softly, almost imperceptibly, and sucked in her lips. He snorted, smiled, a shake of the head as he finished pouring, and moved the bottle to his own glass. You don't have to be so nervous, Evelyn. It's just me and you. You can tell me anything. I'm very open-minded, a man of the world. I know the way things work. I'm familiar with what goes on behind closed doors. In response to his comment about it being just him and her eyes had flicked to the left and right again, almost as if to remind herself there were people around them, though it shouldn't have been necessary, considering how boisterous they were. Don't worry about them, Tucker said, depositing the champagne bottle back into the cooler with a clatter and crunch. What we talk about is none of their business, and vice versa. Let's just focus on getting to know each other. He lifted his glass, took a sip, let the bubbles pop in his mouth and tickle his throat. Effervescent. Evelyn watched him return the glass to the table with dampening eyes and quivering lip, bubbles spinning in the amber liquid in the untouched glass before her. So you're not a mean teacher, and you have no asshole students, and everyone you work with is lovely. Okay, I get it. They've conditioned you well. Turning a blind eye is second nature. That's okay. That can be fixed. You just have to open your eyes, see things for what they are. Identify the evil in people. Acknowledge it. Accept that it's there to be destroyed. And do you know the best way to do that? He crossed his arms, lifted an eyebrow, cocked his head. And no, she said, the first tear escaping an eye and running down a scratched, grime-covered cheek. I don't. Buck, you know, I think you got the wrong impression of me. I'm not a bad person. I treat people well. I don't. I'm not. The best way to do that. He cut her off, craning his head closer to hers, his nose almost touching the trembling candle flame, is to find it in yourself and expose it. Draw it out into the light, like a putrid, rotting vampire. Set it free and watch the havoc it wreaks. Once you know what your own darkness is capable of, you'll be able to recognize it in others. And then you'll be able to do something about it. Like me. It's simple, really. So come on, let's go on a journey of self-discovery. Aren't you drinking? Please, Buck. I don't think I'm what you're looking for. I think we should... Have you ever cheated on someone, Evelyn? Deliberately, or accidentally, thinking it was okay because, it wasn't that serious and they weren't invested. No, I never. Have you ever lied to someone to let them down gently, or just because you wanted some attention? To be wined and dined, treated like a princess, to pass the time. Buck, I want to stop, please. Have you ever hit anyone? A sibling? A child? Have you ever lost your cool and lashed out blindly with a hand or a foot? Hurt someone out of anger or desire? Please, so you don't use your authority to punish students. How about something else? Have you seduced one? All those virile young teenagers staring you up and down. Have you ever taken advantage of it? Tasted forbidden fruit? Or maybe not them, maybe one of their parents, maybe a bit of home-wrecking sates an urge. I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know what kind of person you think I am, but I'm not. Have you ever thought about killing someone, Evelyn? Pulling a cord tight around their neck and watching them choke, sticking a knife in their guts and twisting it, enjoying the warmth of the warm, sticky blood that... Jesus, God, somebody help me, please, somebody help me. She screamed, she stomped, she shook, she howled and yelled and roared. Teardrops flew from her eyes, but nobody helped. Oh, Evelyn, said Tucker, after allowing her a moment. I had a good feeling about you. I thought if I could get you to see the light and come around to my way of thinking, we'd have fun expelling assholes from the world. But it's not going to happen, is it? She continued to scream, wrenching and twisting in the chair she was tied to. So he shrugged and took hold of the candle, slid it from its holder, revealed the blade that protruded from its base. The teacher's eyes went wide, and her voice cracked as he angled it towards her throat, leaned further forward, and swiped left. A second mouth fell open in the smooth, pale skin of her throat, and she gasped, gurgled, thrashing more urgently as a spine-chilling groan crept from her soul. Tucker sat back and watched. No glee showed on his face. No excitement. He watched blankly. The knife held loose, the thin layer of blood on its blade, sprinkling scarlet splashes on the tablecloth. If there was an air about him at all, as his second hope for a partner fizzled out, it was one of disappointment. He really would have liked her as a soulmate. After a minute, when Evelyn stopped twitching, he checked to ensure his shirt and jacket hadn't been soiled, then slid the candle knife back into its holder, licked his forefinger, extinguished the candle's flame, pushed his chair back, and got up. He took a napkin from the table, dabbed at his mouth as he stepped back, watching his scuffed loafers, careful not to step into the blood that had pooled beneath the chair behind him. The blood that had oozed from boring, not mysterious Ashley. To his left, bound and gagged, Katerina lunged her upper body towards him, impressive arm muscles bulging through the gossamer thin material of the dress he'd clad her in. brown eyes glowering with hate, teeth gnashing behind the black rubber strap that subdued her mouth. The chair was bolted to the floor. Her feet were chained to the chair. Her movement was restricted. He wasn't ready for her yet. A fist to the face, she slumped, head lolling loosely over her chest, to the right of the teacher. In the center of a long, abandoned warehouse, another dressed table, another pair of chairs, and terrified captive. A puddle of urine, not blood. On the floor around her feet, Tucker fished a lighter from his pocket. As he stepped around the corpse of bleeding Evelyn, lit the wick of the candle dagger protruding from chrome scabbard. Lighter, back in pocket, he took hold of the rubber gag around the girl's head, pulled it off, relishing the snap as it came loose. "Please," she said, all wild, rabbit eyes and mascara-smeared face. "Don't hurt me. I'll do anything. I promise. Anything." He drew a well-practiced smile onto his goatee-framed jaw and slid into the seat opposite his date, the blonde in the ivory-white dress, whose curls hung loose around her face, and whose name was displayed on a sticker. "Mandy," he announced, spreading his hands to greet her and bowing theatrically. "So good to see you. I was delighted to hear you wanted to meet me again. I believe you had some thoughts on escapable fate."